in our hands. Here we stand. I'm a teacher, I'm black and I'm a man.
In demand,
Hard,
in demand,
intelligent,
in demand,
integrity.
in demand.
In Demand. Teach, mentor, volunteer.
All right, today we have Anderson's friend and Dante Anderson. We're just going to talk with them. They are a homeschooling family, and we'll get into some discussion on how, lessons that they learn, how it can be applied for all parents and guardians. Just right now, all parents and guardians have been deputized educators now. So we want to just get into that discussion on, what exactly is the difference between learning from a school institution and learning from home. And we hope to be able to, give some pointers, to give some clarity about the differences and, what can be done by everyday parents and guardians. So my name is Quan Nellums of In Demand. This is my wife,
Courtney.
Thank you guys for agreeing to join us and to have this discussion with us. Like, how would you guys define homeschooling?
So I think the method of teaching that we employ is called homeschooling, but in reality, what we're doing is home discipling. With our children, one of the major goals for us was to make sure that we were presenting them the right foundation. So starting off with what our faith was. And it takes us to like Deuteronomy 6, where it says, Hear, O Israel, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all soul, and mind. And it says, these commands which I give to you today are to be on your heart. Impress them on your children. Talk about it when you lie down, when you get up, when you walk along the road, and so on. And so for us, when we talk about home discipleship, it's not only training a child academically. I think there has to be character development. There has to be instilling of discipline. There has to be an understanding of who the child is. There has to be an understanding of temperament. There has to be an understanding of love languages. So there is, when you look at a child, there's so much that's going into who they are as an individual. And so if you want to honor yourself and honor them in the process, you have to take all of that into consideration. You can't just say, I'm going to design one thing and we're going to do this one way and it's going to work for everybody in this fashion. And so for us, character building is important. And as you see, I think the beauty of being able to home disciple your child is as you are training them and you're presenting material or information, if you see something that is lacking, you have the firsthand opportunity to say, hey, we're going to stop what we're doing and we're going to address this in its immediacy and allow it to go on. And as we know, parenting is ongoing. It doesn't just stop. But because they're with you, you can say, hey, let's address this. Because typically, if a child is struggling with a character issue, it's not only going to be in day-to-day engagement, it's going to show up in the academics. So one example would be like if a child doesn't like following instructions, when it comes to math, they're going to struggle because math is very much logical. You have to follow a process. So when you get to algebra and it's asking you to show your work, that child that doesn't like following instructions, they're just going to try to skip to the end result. And then you say, well, it's not right. And they're like, why isn't it right? I'm like, well, you didn't follow instructions. You didn't go through the process. You didn't show your work. And so those issues, if you don't address them as they're young, they just continue on. And then they get to certain points in life that it just manifests in different ways.
Mm-hmm. So, you had a question?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, there's so much I want to get into, but I kind of got this put out into halves. So the second half, I really want to get into some other things, but I want to continue with your journey into homeschooling. What has been some of the challenges and successes that you've had with homeschooling your children?
Challenges. I think one of the first challenges initially, I would say, is not knowing what I'm like, what I had gotten myself into. It's kind of like, oh wow. So I'm a perfectionist, and so um, I was like researching everything. I was going to conferences, to fairs, seminars, because it was just like I needed to be prepared for this task that I had um, taken up. And so I think the greatest advice I got was like I was standing in the middle of a curriculum fair and I was overwhelmed because you're talking about like a Kobo Center type deal with curriculum everywhere. And I'm like, how do I know what to pick? And it's not like I could say that it had my worldview because nothing really had our worldview the way that we see things. And so I was like, okay, I know I'm gonna have to get bits and pieces here and this and that. And I was just standing, just looking confused. The lady walked up to me, uh, and she was like, you look like you're having a challenging time. I'm like, yep, I sure am. I'm like, I don't know where to start. And she told me, don't buy anything. And I was like, really? She said, don't buy anything. She said, go home and learn your children. And I was like, okay. It's like, what does that mean? And what she expressed to me is just like, your children have been outside of your home for a little bit and you need to bring them back and just kind of like let them be, let them explore and see what kind of naturally becomes the progression of who they are. And so I would say the first year of when we came back, I mean, they learned so much, but it wasn't in a traditional sense.
Mhm.
To museums, we were going to science centers, we were traveling. Um, Whatever they said they wanted to learn, I made it happen. Um, and it's been like that since we began the journey. So, like one year, they wanted to learn. Well, they took a civics class with Courtney, and then they were learning certain things at home. And so, another homeschooling family and we were like, okay, we're going to DC. They've learned what they need to learn. So, we went and we spent a week in DC, and they went to go see the monuments. They went down to some of the museums. So it was a very engaging situation for them.
Mhm. And so, and just think about what you're saying. It's like everything, as someone who used to be a educator as well, about the personal learning plans and, things like that. Schools try to do that, but the fact that, as a parent, you could do that as well. Even if you choose to have your children in school, the school doesn't have to be the only place where learning is. And just the fact, the scripture that you used about, you know, uh, discipling your kids, the word of God being on their heart, seeing it wherever they go, education doesn't have to stop. It doesn't have to stop when the school bell ends. It doesn't have to start when the school bell starts, and home is a place where, education can abound, and parents are, whether, and I'll ask you about this as well as far as the misconceptions, but, um, you know, especially during this time of quarantine, a lot of parents, a lot of teachers who have kids who are at home, they're like, well, I don't know, I can't do this, I can't do that. What if I don't know how? What if and it's really, like you said, just learning your kids, and, everything is learning. Education is not all academic,
Yeah.
I think about there was I won't say his name. I say it, but there was a man from Detroit who became a neurosurgeon, Ben Carson. But looking at his story, his mom couldn't read. He didn't know his mother couldn't read, but she lit a fire under him to learn and gave him assignments and did things with him to expand his knowledge. And she didn't necessarily have that knowledge to
That's right.
neurosurgeon, but she had the wherewithal to say, hey, I know this is what you need, and I'm gonna provide this for you, and I'm gonna give you guidelines and discipline to get this reading done, or to get this assignment done, or et cetera.
I'm hoping to add something, Quan, to that last question that you had. Uh, one of the challenges that I've seen my wife go through, I didn't necessarily go through because I'm not a perfectionist, the same way she is,
Right.
but was expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. People will work to place some expectations on you and what they do with what you do with your children. I don't really subscribe to that thinking process much. It's taken me time to really value education.
Mm.
It's taken me about 20 years to really recognize and begin to value education because definitely I come from a school of education. It's just not academics. I learned so much in different ways. It is one way, and in time I've learned to value, but it didn't initially begin that way. But from a homeschool perspective, sometimes homeschoolers can put these false expectations on each other. Well, this person was reading by 3.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't reading right now, and they 6. This person was doing algebra by 8. Mine is having trouble with arithmetic, basic adding and subtraction functions, and they're 9. I think it's important to measure. From an engineering perspective, measuring is very important. Okay, but I think that you got to give yourself the longitude and latitude with each child to know that they're a little bit different. And then you got to recognize maybe you can put some expectations on your own self by setting up some goals and then working toward them. But education of one child might not look the same as another child. And then we have a unique circumstance. We have 8 children.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the challenges for me as an educator or as a parent specifically is I would always be concerned that I wouldn't have a proper amount of time to spend individually with children. That was a serious concern of mine, that they would grow up without that one-on-one interface, especially after I got more than 5 or 6 children. That was really challenging for me. But you make adjustments. So literally, when I go to the store in 20-minute increments, that's a chance to spend some time with one kid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and initially I had a series of questions that I utilized to engage with each of them, and I kept them on my phone. Now it's more natural. Some of my children that are introverts is a little bit more challenging to pull things out of them at times. But going to the store, making this run, making that run, and diversifying who I take with me, that's a brief opportunity to connect. And so I take advantage of those opportunities. So certainly, false expectations can be challenging. One of the biggest opportunities in my mind, there's no bound on traveling. So lots of opportunities come up. And we have the liberty to go just like that. And that's very beneficial, very beneficial. So that's also a big plus in my mind.
I want to say 2 things about expectations. The first thing is, and Fran, this still may be a struggle for you, but you were one of the first people who told me to let go of my expectations. And it wasn't a big moment. It was really funny. It was my first year. It was like the first month or 2 into our homeschool journey. And I bumped into you at the union office, and I was talking with Nicole, and you heard me say something like, it's going okay. I just think, it'll be better once I just kind of wrap my hands around everything. And you were like, you're not going to ever do that. It's always going to change. It'll always be different, and that's okay. And you have to be okay with that. And then you just kind of went on to something else. But that really, in that moment, released me, helped me to start thinking differently about those expectations. But I also wonder, because I experienced it in our own family, do you think the communication and the ideas about expectations, do you find that it differs for you as the mom and as the one that's really immersed day to day in the planning and the teaching? And that's not to take away from the dads and what you contribute, but do you see a difference playing out there?
I do. I'll give an example. I pulled in the 5th grader and the 7th grader to a junior level high school class. And what I do is I email their assignments and I CC their dad. And he was like, "What kind of dissertation are you asking these children to write?" He's like, "This is too much." But I was like, "No, it's not." I'm like, "They can do it." And so when the output started coming and they were like sharing the information, he was just like, "What?" You know, it was like a shocker. Because I think sometimes because I'm engaging a little bit more with them, I'm not expecting the 5th grader to write as well as the high school level student. But if you throw that information at them, they become, it's just like, "Oh, I didn't know that." My thing is, you know how to read. If you don't know what a word means, there's a dictionary. Look it up, and that's adding to vocabulary. And so I think for me, I do have high expectations for the children, but I think my high expectations come from me seeing that they can do it. And so it's knowing how much to push and what to push in, and seeing if they come. My thought is, if we're doing a subject matter and maybe it's like a younger child that comes in and they kind of poke their head in, I always say, "Come on, come have a seat." Because my thing is, if you start asking questions, I have your attention, and that means you want to be engaged. And I want you to be engaged, because then I don't have to teach you again. You already got it. So
I want to ask,
Hey, Quan, I got one more thing I want to add to that question.
go ahead.
And the question, just to take us back to it, was what challenges and successes do you have as a homeschool parent? Another success in my mind is I can recall in the 6th grade, I disengaged from wanting to academically learn because of the social pressures of recognizing who girls were. And also the jockeying for position that the boys was doing based on that. Okay. That was serious. Okay. And there was a lot of learning happening. It was cultural, it was social, but I turned off wanting to learn academically because those things were more important than the academics. At home, my kids aren't subject to that, to the same capacity. They don't have this internal competition inside the house to get somebody's attention, or this in competition to want to assert themselves in certain manners. That's a benefit, especially for a person like me. So literally, it would have benefited me to snatch me out of school in the 6th and 7th grade and really not reintroduce me until I was in college. Because it took me a long time to navigate through that space, a long time. So up to the 6th grade, I was academically engaged, very much so. And I enjoyed it. But in the 6th grade, switch went off. Switch turned right off. And I can distinctly remember that. I know for my sons, that hasn't happened to that capacity. I know that, I can see that. And they don't have that struggle, and that's a beautiful thing in my mind.
we actually know a family that pulls their children out, boy or girl, within that time frame. 6th and 7th grade, I think it is, that they pull them out and they call it kind of like reaffirming and making sure that their identity, the value systems, and that they understand where they're going, and they reinsert them back if they feel that everything is on the up and up. And that is the only time frame that they homeschool children. So.
And you know, and there's different, and that's another thing, that there's different modes of how homeschooling can be utilized. You know, you have people who do families that do a hybrid experience. My wife did that at one point, where you would have the students go to school for electives or for certain classes, but that's only like maybe on certain days of the week. Other times they're getting schooled at home, or you know, you may have multiple children where maybe some children, in our case, one child may be enrolled in school, the other one is not. You know, so yeah, I've seen them done that way, and then especially what you're saying, like during that middle school is a very turbulent time period as well. They used to actually separate middle school from every other grade level. So you would have elementary, and then you would have 6 and 7 and 8. Some would just do 7 and 8 and maybe 9, you know, but you know, back in the day, you know, I think we really understood that middle school is just a different time period where there's a different mode of learning, engagement that needs to be done. And so, you know, definitely I can see that being done as well. We're actually extracting the kids out during that time and then implementing them back in. So I wanted to go to the, you know, just speaking of what the times that are going on right now. We're living in very interesting times. You know, with COVID-19, the fears that go around there. There's a lot of uncertainty. But with all this uncertainty, with things being closed down, parents not being able to go to work, schools being closed down, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty, but there also is a lot of opportunity. What opportunities do you see with this COVID-19? What opportunities do you see arising from that?
I definitely perceive that it's a good time to recalibrate. I think the way that I saw it initially when everything was starting to transpire, one day I was just like sitting, I was like, man, so many of the things that we hold near and dear are being taken away. And I was like, and then I rephrased it as like, well, our idols are being taken away from us, because the academic idol was being torn down, the entertainment idol was being torn down, the work idol was being torn down, and we were being like stripped bare, and we are stripped bare. So it's kind of like, okay, what are we supposed to do with this now that all of this stuff is out of the way and the distractions? We had already kind of cut off a lot of things for the children just to start to quiet down, and because in the spring and the summer we like to travel with them too. But the bigger picture was just kind of like, what is the needful portion? Now that all these distractions, no more, so many children are like running, like after school program. I have violin, I have basketball, I have National Honor Society. So to me, it's just like everything has been taken away. You actually have a moment to sit down, to be still, to think, to hear yourself think. The noise is gone. So it's kind of like, what are you going to do with that free time? How are you going to reconnect? And depending on the ages of your children or your child, I mean, it's the perfect time to sit down to recalibrate in the terms of asking, like, where are you? You know, what are you thinking? Reassessing life. If there were things going on, this is like a perfect opportunity to digest those things with a child. Perfect opportunity while things are going on. Like, I will use us as an example. There are moments that are tense with that many people being in one space, but the conversation this morning was, even in conflict or even in tension, you can learn. Because what we're learning is that no one is perfect. Everyone has like something that they need to work on. So when there's something that's triggered, let's talk about it. What's really going on with you? What is that trigger? Is there miscommunication going on? Is there something that you haven't, shared with us that we need to talk about, pray about, process. So it's a good time to kind of reframe, where are we going, and asking ourselves, this activity that I was participating in, or this thing that I was doing, how needful was it? And it is also a perfect time to allow the child to kind of explore what they want to do. If they were like in a public school setting, okay, what is it? What are you doing with your time now? Especially if you don't have like a rigid curriculum. If there was nothing, if they're not being given anything to do, the world is yours. The first question is, what do you want to do? And then begin to give them the platform to explore those things. I mean, there's so many online resources. They have access to universities that offer online classes for free. You as the parent, you have a lot of gifts. You have a lot of things within you that you haven't had the opportunity to pour out into them. If you like art, pour it out into them. If you play an instrument, pour it out to them. So within yourself, it's just like, take a moment and pray and say, look, Father, what should I be doing with this time? Because it's a gift. I don't even think we realize it. It is a gift. It's a moment to love. It's a moment to learn something new. It's a moment to really, pray. And there may need to be some moments of you asking for forgiveness. If you were so consumed with work or so consumed with what you thought was important, and you now realize it doesn't mean a thing because you no longer have it. So it's like you're reassessing life in so many different ways. So to me, I think it's a time to really reflect and figure out what does the way forward look like for us, and what is in your best interest.
So, during this time, we discussed this a little earlier, but the governor of Michigan just let everybody know officially that schools will not be opening back up this school year. This has put parents in a particular situation where they've been deputized as being educators of their own children. Some feel overwhelmed. We talk about some of the lack of resources, some of the inequities when it comes to access to technology or what have you. But the fact is that parent, guardians, and children will be in a situation where there is limited distractions. There's no, like you said, running. Well, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do that. We are all what they call it, safe. What is it? Safe. Station. What is it? Station and safe. What is it? Shelter in place.
Shelter in place.
Yeah, we have shelter in place. So, what advice will you give to? I mean, because some parents, this is maybe the first time, depending on how old the children are. This is the first time that they had this, undistracted time with their kids, like in years maybe. So, what advice would you give the parents that find themselves in this situation now, that they are now the sole means of interaction and education for their children?
Are you asking in terms of what should they do at the time, or are you asking in terms of like from an academic standpoint?
I would say both. Just advice, period. Academic wise, but also also, I don't want to use the word socialize, but socializing with their kids, interacting with their children on a deeper level now, that there's no distractions to, because it's easy, like, you can come home and really boom, 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 sleep. You had no really type of interaction with your family, So now that's kind of been taken out of the water, and I've seen, on an academic level, I've seen parents, whether whether they have a teaching background or not, where they are a little overwhelmed, and just from a family that's been doing this for a while, like, what advice what you give to parents that, academic and interaction wise, to parents who are facing this new normal.
I go
Let me
ahead.
start.
Yep.
I would first take the time to make a realization. When I first started having children, I began to recognize how selfish I was. The more children I had, the less private time I would have. And I began to make that discovery.
I hit home.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed, bro.
He had a deep moan of
Yeah.
and that was eye-opening for me. I think the culture paints a picture of what our futures and our lives should look like, whether that's American dream or whatever you think. Life looks different than that. I can recall having a moment. I think it was just me, my wife, and my first child. This is back when I still ate pork. I used to fry bacon in the skillet. If you're a cook, you can start to see which piece is going to shape up the best way, okay? And in my mind, I would be plotting on, I got 6 slices of bacon in this pan. This one right here is going to be the best. I'm going to preserve that one for myself. Right. That's how my mind was working. And it was frightening to me to see how selfish I was, how, the scripture says the heart of a man is exceedingly wicked. There's moments in life that'll escalate in front of you and you'll really see who you are. I think that everybody being in a space, having a different perspective, a different will, wanting and desiring different things, it escalates that. And it makes you digest how selfish you actually are. And then you have to, after you discover that, then the next step is, okay, well, what's my plan to address myself? And that's very challenging. And all of a sudden, we've been placed in this space to look at ourselves in the mirror and make that adjustment. And so people are having those challenges. In many homes, people come home, they grab something to eat, like you said, Quan, and maybe everybody goes off to their corner with their own personal device. Moments like this can show you how dependent you are. Myself, I like to be able to break away for a minute. We're supposed to be shelter in place. I try to find a way. I need to go to the store at least twice a day, That's ridiculous, But those are moments that allow me to breathe for a minute. Now, I think, the older I get, the more introverted I've become. I used to be an extreme extrovert, but work puts me in a space where I always have to engage people. So when I come home, I kind of want to not do that if I have the opportunity. So I think there is value to recouping with some personal time. But I think we also have to recognize, with all of us in this shared space, we need to understand we got to figure out how to share once again, whether that's resources, that's time, that's energy, and that can be challenging. That can be very much challenging. But I think the first spot or the first thing we got to do is authentically recognize that about ourselves. Then you got to put some plans in place after that.
Dante, I think you raised an important point, and even in addressing Karen's question, where we are is not really, it's not what I would consider authentic home school. And you all alluded to this before, the freedom and the flexibility and the travel and the ability to gather with others who are like-minded. All of that has been taken away.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's causing a lot of the pressure and the, we see some families are dealing with it with funny memes and jokes about the kids, but, I've also seen some real cries for help in social media and, and emails and that sort of thing. And so, I think one of the first things that parents need to understand is that you're limited in what you can do and what you can provide for your child. and that's okay. And we are as adults, and we work and we're so used to making things happen, but we can't maneuver like that right now.
Yeah.
And so I think it's back to the expectations and pressure. Parents need to first kind of release themselves from those expectations.
I tell you a funny thing, Courtney, like the first 2 days I was home, I'm walking around the house, it's about 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'm looking around like, where's everybody at up in this house? Is everybody asleep? What's going on in this house? I'm strategist, I'm getting ready to wake everybody in the house up from A to Z. Everybody's getting up right now. But I'm not here at that time of the day. And things look differently. We just happen to have had a new baby. So what that means is at times the baby is up late at night, and so is my wife. So that what that means is sometimes there's a little bit of a lag. People start a little later around here. I'm used to getting up at 6, and by 7:30 it's on, So that was an adjustment, for myself. I had to downshift a little bit. And my wife always talks about this. Typically I'm not at home during these hours. So these are typically, power hours. Okay, I'm making decisions and I'm making stuff happen, like you guys mentioned, where, my family isn't my staff. I make that adjustment, and sometimes that's challenging. But that's a good point. Very good point.
Yeah, and I just to add to that, I think that and that is what is similar between where we are now and traditional homeschool life is the point that you made, how much you learn about yourself. When we started homeschooling, I never anticipated, just the first 2-3 years really was learning and unlearning some things. My desires and expectations and, letting go, how I envision my life being and thinking about, well, what were those things rooted in? And, have I passed those things on to my children incorrectly? And so having to use your word to recalibrate and redo some things. And I think that that's probably the most useful aspect of this time, is to just take the time to learn more about yourself and about your family. That's, in all of this, it's, watching all of the sicknesses and deaths, has been really hard, but it's also been just beautiful. And I'm so grateful for the additional time we have together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another thing as far as we're looking and hearing about people passing and some people I've known personally that passed away from this pandemic. How do what adjustments do you make for the kids? A lot of times as our kids are processing it, we don't know, are they traumatized by it? Do we make significant changes where it's like, all right, I know that, you may have some trauma from this, or, there's some things that you're not getting, we may do this every day at this time outside of the home, but, we can't do it. We got to make do with what we have here. It seems like that we definitely have to make adjustments for our children because they're dealing with this. This is something that we've never experienced, and then for them at their age to experience it, this can be a very scary time, and so definitely from our faith tradition, giving them that hope and, but also really making adjustments, saying that, hey, I understand, we'll adjust because, you may be a little stir crazy right now because you're up in the crib and we're usually not here at this time. So,
I think, their mental health is important and having some real conversations because they are grieving in certain aspects. And I don't know that That's a conversation that a lot of people are having, whether a child is homeschooled, private school, public school, they are grieving what life used to be like for them. So like for us, we keep checking in with the oldest because this was her season of establishing independence. She has a driver's license. She was hybrid learning. She was doing public school, homeschool, and started college. So when you ascend and you're like, yes, you're going up, and then someone goes like, nope, you can't go, you can't drive, you can't this, you can't leave the house. Okay. It's just like, no, you can't go see your friends. No, you can't hang out. So once you take all of that away, they are like, okay, so now the ones that are seniors are like grieving. There will be no graduation. There will be no prom. And there is also the whole thing like, are these idols and things that we've set our children up to expect that are not necessarily essential parts of life? Like what are the dynamics that are being played out? So there's so many levels that you have to process. And it's just like, okay, how are you feeling about this? Are you okay today? And for our children, I'm still like, you need to go outside. Like you can practice social distancing, but you need to go outside. You need to breathe some fresh air, and you can't just sit in the house. And I say that, and I hope people take heed of that. You don't want depression to set in for them. So there needs to be a conversation. And that, you need to check in even with the 6-year-old, because they are used to circle time. They're used to having some engagement with their friends. And so everyone is processing in different ways. And some of them don't even have the language to say what it is that they're dealing with. And so a few of mine have asked when they've seen us on Zoom conferences. So we're going to be working on getting them on Zoom because they're like, they want to see their friends and they want to check in. And so in all of this and the change, one of the questions was, what can you do? I think just dealing with who you are and who your children are with honesty is very important in this time. And also it being okay to say, I'm sorry, I may have missed it here, or I'm gonna miss it here. And so give me room to walk with you, and you need to give me, vice versa, so that we can have that space to talk and communicate. I think for us, like Friday was like, typically on Fridays, we're like ready to be done. So it's like, can we go to bed early? You guys can hang out a little bit later. But what we're finding is that we have some children that come alive at nighttime. And so our bedroom turned into karaoke. It was just like, and we just kept on turning around looking at each other like, who are these kids? Oh.
I'm on a clock. I got to go to sleep at by 10. Can't take it no more.
So he's like falling asleep, and he's like, why are they still here? But it's like, they were like totally, everyone is coming out in just different ways. So I'm just like, we have to let them be who they are. Yeah. Wanted to try new things. And so one of them is turning out to be like master chef, made like pizza. No, it was like, because I was like, we're not eating takeout. I was like, I can't afford to. I don't even know, that's just a concern. So he's just like, I want pizza. I'm going to make the pizza. And I was like, this is the best pizza we've had in a long, long time. Yeah. And it was just like amazing. So it's just like, this is a time for them to pretty much discover that there are endless possibility. It's like, they can do anything, is basically what it boils down to. So it's just like, let's sit down and let's have a conversation. What do you want this time to look like for you as well? Because there's some things that they can do. I have 2 that are working on writing business plans. We can make it happen. We have nothing else to do. So it's just like, you as the parent, engage with them, go into their world and say, hey, what is it that you want to do with your time? What is it? Set a goal, do something productive. So manage them from a mental health perspective, manage them from an academic perspective, manage them from a spiritual perspective. I think it's important to take that time out to pray with them and to re-engage them. And even that, if all of you sit in the living room together, you can pass the Bible around and have everybody read out loud. That's keeping their reading skills going on. If you have a little one that's in the 2nd and 3rd grade, can you point out to me a couple of nouns and verbs from what we just read? I mean, when they talk about a specific place and they say Kush, oh, okay, does everybody know what they're referring to? Do we need to go get a map? I mean, you can make it whatever you want to make it. And I think, like I said, this is a gift, and we just need to use every moment of that gift wisely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, Quan, I'm sorry I forgot to mention this before we get started. I got a 3:10 hard stop.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Later or tomorrow or whatever, but I do have a 3:15 meeting I got to participate in.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. This is your question then, man. I was just about to say I had like 2 more questions, but this is directed towards you, Dante. As you know, like whether it's well in education period, Black men are not necessarily well represented in the teaching force. It's like 2% of Black men who are educators in the nation. And so, one of the reasons why is because similar like to like nursing, a lot of people look at teaching as being like, especially when you're dealing with young kids, as being something that's the prerogative of women. So as a man, as a father, how do you implement yourself as a teacher and not just necessarily, oh, I'm just a hammer, I'm just a disciplinarian. How do you implement yourself as an educator as well?
The first thing I say, Quan, is some of the things that you guys are doing, I find so amazing and intriguing. I understand your question, what you're asking, and as far as my contribution to how I engage them. First of all, a lot of patience is required. And, different ages need different things, and different boys and girls need different things. I recognize that. I recall a couple years ago at my wife's co-op, she called me and she said, hey, they said, blah, blah, did this, this, and this, and they were fighting and fussing. And I listened to what she said to say, and she said, well, what do you think? She was mad. She wanted to go bust down some other women. I said, you know what? He did everything that they said he did. Every one of those things he did. It is no doubt in my mind. He did. Okay? So as parents, let's not defend it. We embrace the fact that we know he did those things. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the reality is, I'm committed to a lifelong of teaching, a lifelong of training. So there is no, it ends after a certain age, after a certain time frame. I recognize I'm going to be engaged in this relationship of training and teaching, fathering the rest of my life, irregardless of the age. And I know different children got different propensities. So I might as well not hide from it. I'm perfectly fine with absorbing it and understanding that they did it. So let's work through it together. You hear the teachers talking about, oh yeah, y'all gonna see now, because kids at home. I understand what they're talking about. I know my kids have propensities to do certain things. Okay, so how do I react to that? What's my reaction plan? What's my response? How do I engage them? It goes back to the character building. It just so happens my position is there are biblical solutions to all character issues. Okay, so I work to apply those. Not only do I work to apply them, I'm extremely transparent. So there are many moments that I don't know the answer, and I share I don't know the answer. And I'm gonna work to find one through study, through prayer, through life experience. I'm gonna work to find an answer. There are many moments that I make a mistake. I apologize. I'm perfectly fine with it. But not do I just apologize. My goal should be working to make some changes. If I see there's something that I need to change, do those things. This is all what teaching and training looks like in my mind. I work to be very much so intentional. So by that, I'm saying if I understand each kid has a different need, sometime in my prayer time, I'm bringing that up. Yeah. Okay, and then I'm thinking about listening for the solutions, and I'm thinking about the solutions, and I write them down, and I try different things with different kids. the key is writing them down. I don't just let them float around. I take the child's name associated to a note on my phone and I write the strategies down on it. And then I circle back to it and I try to execute those things. It's important for me to model diligence. It's important for me to model accountability. Those are all very critical, important things. From an educational perspective, I've been very much so engaged with history because I like history. If I didn't have to do the job I have to do, I like learning about history. So easy for me to teach it because it's just an open discussion about what we just read. Comparing and contrasting facts and what is facts and what's not facts. So that's an easy subject for me to teach about. Another subject I can remember a few years back, I did a shark class. So I downloaded some things about sharks. Again, I find things that I'm interested in, and it become easy for me to talk about. So you can take any subject matter and apply it, any topic and apply it to a subject matter. So sharks, we can do an English class about sharks. Math, we can divide, subtract, and add sharks. Science, is easy to get into the biology of sharks. Geography, we can talk about where they are. You know, certain sharks swim in brackish water, salt water, nothing in fresh water. So it's easy to apply one subject, one topic across multiple subjects, if you understand what I'm saying. Take some interest and you got to be intentional. And that goes back to not being selfish. So that means I have to create time to be intentional and then execute. And with that, I got to slide out.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
But again, I'm available if we want to do it again.
Hey, we can talk all day. I'm gonna go ahead and we'll end it.
Okay. See y'all soon.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what Dante said. A lot of times, I know you guys have 4 boys, and a lot of times boys can be a little different when it comes to engaging than the young ladies. And so I know you guys have 4 boys. I have 2 boys, and it's just like you said, a lot of times it's not necessarily even the lesson you sit down with them to teach. It's what they observe. Cutting your hair, they looking at you. Why'd you do it like that?
They watch you more than you realize.
Yeah, how you interact with your spouse, how you interact with your parents, and all things. And so and I think that's one of the big things where, hey, the lessons that I'm teaching you has real world application, because I'll teach a lesson, whether it's from the Bible, whether it's from history. I always like to couple it with this is what it means in real life. But they can only see that it means that in real life when you actually do it,
That's right.
So in real life. And so that's definitely when it comes down to the men being involved. A lot of times we kind of sit back and we too tired or sometimes like that. And I know, not saying that the mothers are not tired as well, but oftentimes, just like in school, in public school period, men, they struggle to find ways to engage students or be there. And so I think that as fathers at this point, know that, hey, you are honestly, especially when you're dealing with your boys, you are really the first teacher, because they're looking at you to see how you're acting. So with that, I just, do you have any last imparting words as we end this segment? We've been on it for like an hour now. So, is there any last words that you want to impart to the people watching?
Last words. I would just say, just engage. Use the time to engage. Get off of Facebook. Get off of Instagram. You can't go to the club tonight. You need to kind of focus in, because I think we still have technology, and that's still a distraction for a lot of people. So yes, like Dante had to run out because he has a meeting for work, and that's the reality for a lot of people. They're still trying to educate their children at home, but they still have to work via conferences and so on and so forth. But I would say engage, engage, engage. You need to know, this is like the perfect time to know where you are and where your child, what positioning your child is in. And I think we take that for granted. I think we know, but we really don't know. Like the word says, we know in part. So I would say this is a great time for as a family to just really recalibrate, reconnect, and reestablish. Maybe you need to reestablish order on the home front. Maybe there is something that you've put off, conversations. This is the best time for you to get those things going, and dream while you're at home as well. And when I say dream, those things that you've been putting off and saying, when I have time, I can do them now. You're home, get going to them. And whatever you have on the inside that you feel that you've wanted to share with your child, deposit it. Just let it pour out. Have fun cooking meals together. Go sit in the kitchen, put the music on. It shouldn't just be you by yourself. Bring them into your world, or you go into their world, and just enjoy the moment and the time that you have together. And I guess that's the big thing that I would say. And for those parents that have found themselves as happen chance in this situation and are responsible for their academics, reach out to people that you know have a vested interest in your children, whether they're homeschoolers or not, or educate whoever it is that you know has a vested interest that can walk with you in this journey, and provide you with some resources that you may not be aware of. We've been doing that for some families who have children that have certain specific wants and needs. You can make anything happen in this time. It's up to you. If it's God's will, it's going to happen. So that's how I see it. So,
Corey, you have any closing words?
I think Fran summarized it perfectly. I just appreciate you, Fran and Dante, for just always being an example and being transparent about your own journey. There's just so much that we can learn. And thank you to you and In Demand for providing this platform, this opportunity for this conversation.
Yep. And then, regardless of what happens, I know there's been some concern about technology and parents at home having technology, or parents feeling like they're overwhelmed. And I think that you do it the natural teaching is to use every opportunity. Whether I think about what you just said about your children cooking and doing certain assignments based on just the way the flow of the day. You never know what's going to happen in a day, but everything is a teachable moment. Really, everything is a teachable moment if you take advantage of it. So whether you got packets or online material or not, you still got
laundry.
Yeah.
You can pull weeds outside. There's tons of things to do.
There's a lot of stuff.
I mean, even simple stuff. If they're cooking, they're using measuring cups, that's fractions. If you need to restock on anything, you have them go and make a chart. Okay, how many boxes of spaghetti do we need? Do we need rice? I mean, that's taking inventory, building like a spreadsheet. All of those things involve some level of learning. So I think a lot of times we think that if they're not doing things in a traditional sense, that it's not education, but they need life skills. They need certain things that they need to know how to do. You're gonna have to pay bills while you're sitting home. Bring them along, pull out the checkbook, or if you're doing online banking, say, hey, this is how you pay a bill. This is how you log on. By the way, this is how much money I spend on this. So you can pull out that pie chart, that spending equalizer that your credit card or your banking statement does. That's math too. They're looking at a pie chart. So all of those things, when you bring them into your world, those are all great opportunities for them to learn. And they're learning things that typically that they would not be doing. So to me, that has a greater impact, because guess what? Some of those skill sets, they're not taught in school. There's a majority of schools don't have home economics anymore. So you want them to leave your house knowing how to cook something besides ramen noodles. You want them to know how to do their laundry, basic house cooking, like cleaning chores. You want them to know how to do those things. So teach them how to do those things. If you are good, if you know how to cut hair, you're a barber or a hairstylist, teach them how to do that. Whatever your gift, your calling is, whatever that expertise is, pour it out to them and they will appreciate it, because that's something that is part of who you are that you're giving to them. And I think we have to remember, this is an opportunity for us to fall in love with our children again, because I think society and culture has put such a wedge based on their expectations between what a relationship between a parent and a child should look like and what the lines of demarcation are. But the reality is, a job is not your legacy. Your portfolio is not your legacy. Your children are your legacy. They will go on to bear the name of your family, and either good or bad, what they do basically speaks to what you've put into them and the investment that you've made. And so I highly, highly, highly tell everybody, take the time to impart in them that wisdom, and for you to self-reflect and reflect with them and enjoy every moment of it.
All right. I think that's an excellent way to end off. Again, thank you, Fran and
You're most welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Oh yeah, man, we can talk for hours about this, but yeah, thank you for your time, and be safe, and we will maybe have another time to continue this conversation.
Yes, because we have to have, I think we just need to do just one panel about talking about educating Black boys. Courtney
yeah.
had a conversation about that a couple of months ago, and I'm working on something, so I'll be sliding it you guys' way to get some feedback. So
Definitely. All
it's
right.
exciting. All right, you guys be blessed.
Thank you. Tell everyone we
Take
said
care.
hello.
We will. Shalom.
Shalom.